When I arrived at my beach house that Friday afternoon, Chloe was already on the deck, giving orders to 3 workers as if she owned the place. She didn't greet me. She didn't even turn her head when the car stopped in front of the entrance. She just raised her hand, pointing toward the kitchen, and shouted something about the tile needing to arrive before Monday. I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the sea breeze. I got out of the car slowly, watching. The front door was wide open. There were bags of cement stacked next to my pots of geraniums, the ones I planted 5 years ago with my own hands. The sound of a drill pierced the air from somewhere inside the house. My house. The house I bought after 40 years of working double shifts as a nurse at General Hospital. The house I paid for with my sweat after my husband died and left me with nothing but debts and broken promises. Chloe finally saw me. She smiled. That smile that always made me nervous. Too wide, too perfect. "Olga, I'm so glad you're here," she said, as if she were doing me a favor by acknowledging my presence on my own property. "Matthew is inside supervising the kitchen. You'll see. It's going to be beautiful." I didn't answer. I walked toward the entrance, feeling my 71-year-old legs protest with every step. I had driven 4 hours from the city specifically to rest, to listen to the waves, to be alone with my thoughts and my memories. I had dreamed about this week for months, planned every detail. The morning walks on the beach, the books I would read in the hammock, the silence I so desperately needed after an exhausting year. What I found inside took my breath away. The kitchen no longer existed. Or rather, it half existed. The cabinets I installed 3 years ago had been torn from the walls. The tile floor I had chosen so carefully was covered in dust and debris. The walls showed huge holes where the paintings from my Thursday afternoon art classes once hung. The refrigerator was in the middle of the living room, unplugged, its door ajar. The smell of dampness and fresh cement hit me like a slap. "What is this?" My voice came out calmer than I expected, almost a whisper. Matthew appeared from the hallway. My son, 45 years old, and still with that look of a child expecting Mom to fix everything. Except now there was something different in his eyes. Something hard. "Mom, it's a surprise." Well, it was a surprise. He wiped his hands on his pants, leaving gray dust marks. "We're remodeling. Chloe and I decided it's time to update everything. This kitchen was just too old." "You decided," I repeated. The word hung in the air between us. "Yes, and not just the kitchen." He walked toward the stairs and I followed him, feeling my heart begin to beat faster. We went up. Each step felt heavier than the last. When we reached the 2nd floor and he opened the door to the master bedroom, my room, I had to hold onto the doorframe to keep from falling. The bed was gone. The armoire that belonged to my grandmother, that carved wooden heirloom that had survived 3 generations, had been moved who knows where. The walls were half painted, a mint green color I would have never chosen. There were tools everywhere, wires hanging from the ceiling, and a penetrating smell of fresh paint that made me dizzy. Where's my bed? Where are my things? We put them in the small room at the end of the hall, temporarily. Matthew wasn't even looking at me. He was checking something on his phone, typing a message. We need this master bedroom for something important." "For what?" The question came out with more force than I intended. That's when he said it. When he spoke the words that would change everything. "Chloe and I are going to move in here. Permanently. With Gloria, her mom, and her dad. They need a better place. And this house is big enough. We're making the rooms bigger, modernizing everything. It will be perfect for everyone." I stood motionless, paralyzed. The words bounced around in my head but couldn't form a coherent thought. Move in? Permanently? With Chloe's parents? This is my house. Matthew. I know, Mom, but it's also family property. It's time you shared it. You have your apartment in the city. You don't need 2 properties. We do. Chloe is tired of the city noise, and Gloria deserves to live her last years by the sea. She's 73, 2 years older than you. Don't you think she deserves it? There was so much twisted logic in his words that for a moment he almost convinced me. Almost. Until I saw the look on his face, that mix of determination and something that looked dangerously like indifference. He wasn't asking for my permission. He was informing me of a decision already made. You didn't consult me, because I knew you'd say no. You always say no when it comes to helping the family. You've always been like that, Mom, selfish with your things. The word cut through me like a knife. Selfish. Me, who worked until my hands trembled with exhaustion. Me, who paid for his entire college while he changed his major 3 times. Me, who lent him money for the down payment for his car 2 years ago, and he never paid me back. Selfish. I went down the stairs slowly. Each step was a conscious effort not to tremble, not to let myself fall. Chloe was still outside, now on the phone, laughing. I heard her say something about finally having the space we always wanted, and the old woman will just have to get used to it. I went into what was left of the living room. I sat in the only armchair they hadn't moved, that olive green armchair where my husband used to fall asleep on Sunday afternoons watching football. I closed my eyes. I breathed. 1, 2, 3 times. Deep. When I opened them, my gaze fell on my purse, on the vital documents folder I always carried with me. That folder where I kept all the important papers, deeds, wills, contracts, legal powers of attorney, everything perfectly organized and updated, because after 40 years in the healthcare system, I learned that life can change in a second, and it's better to be prepared. I took out my phone. I looked for a name in my contacts. Gregory, my lawyer for 15 years. The man who helped me with all the paperwork when I bought this house, when I updated my will, when I made sure every property was solely in my name after discovering the debts my husband hid for years. I dialed. 3 rings. 4. Olga, what a pleasure to hear from you. How are you? Gregory, I need you to come to the beach house tomorrow morning. Very early. Bring the property deeds and the will. All of it. There was a pause. Gregory knew me well. He knew that if I called him on a Friday afternoon asking for something urgent, it was because the situation demanded it. Did something happen? Yes, I replied, looking out at the deck where Chloe was still laughing, oblivious to what was about to happen. But it's not going to happen anymore. I hung up. I put the phone away. I sat there, in my armchair, surrounded by the disaster they had made of my refuge, my sanctuary, the place I had built with decades of effort. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't confront anyone that night. I just waited. Because I had learned something in 71 years of life. Revenge served hot burns the one who serves it, but revenge served with absolute cold, with surgical precision. That kind destroys without leaving a trace of the one who delivered it. Matthew came down an hour later. He told me he had prepared the small room for me, that my clothes were in boxes, because they needed the master closet for Chloe's and Gloria's things. He handed me a new key. It's for the room at the end of the hall, Mom. We put a lock on it so you can have privacy. I took the key without saying anything. I went up. The back room was barely 9 feet by 9. A single bed pushed against the wall, my things in cardboard boxes. A small window that looked out onto the parking area, not the sea. I lay down on the bed, fully dressed. I looked at the ceiling. I heard the waves in the distance, that sound that always calmed me, but that night only reminded me of everything they were trying to take from me. I closed my eyes and thought about tomorrow, about Gregory arriving at 6 in the morning, about the documents I would sign, about the calls I would make. For the first time in hours, I felt something close to peace. This was just the beginning. I woke up at 5 in the morning, not because I wanted to, but because my body had been accustomed to hospital shifts for decades. Outside, it was still dark. I could hear the sea. That constant murmur that used to calm me now sounded like a silent witness to everything I had lost in less than 24 hours. I got up slowly. My knees protested, as always. 71 years don't forgive. It doesn't matter how much yoga you do or how many vitamins you take. I opened one of the cardboard boxes where they had thrown my clothes. I found some gray pants and a white blouse. I dressed in silence, listening. The house was completely quiet. Matthew and Chloe were sleeping in the first-floor guest room, the one I always reserved for important visitors. Now they had taken it as if it were their own. I went down the stairs, avoiding the 3rd step, the one that always creaked. A habit from my years as a night nurse, when I learned to move without making a sound so as not to wake the patients. I reached the living room. The disaster was still there, of course. The debris, the dust, the refrigerator, still in the middle of everything. But there was something different. On the dining room table, that wooden table I bought at an antique market 10 years ago, there were papers. Lots of papers. I got closer. They were quotes, estimates from contractors, interior designers, furniture stores. I reviewed the numbers and felt the air leave my lungs. $120,000. That was the total cost of the remodel they had planned. $120,000 they planned to spend on my house, without asking me, without my authorization, without my signature. There was something else, a red folder under the quotes. I opened it. Inside, I found a legal document, half-filled, a power of attorney. My name was written at the top as the grantor, and Matthew's name as the appointee. The sections described permissions to sell, remodel, mortgage, and manage properties. The date was blank. The signature line was, too. I stared at that paper for long minutes. Then I understood the full plan. They didn't just want to move into my house. They wanted me to sign a document that would give them total control over all my properties, and they probably expected me to do it without reading, trusting my son blindly, as I had always done. I took out my phone and took pictures of the estimates, of the power of attorney, of every single page. Then I put everything back exactly as I had found it. At 5:40, Gregory arrived. I heard his truck park outside. I went out before he could knock on the door. The sky was beginning to lighten with orange and pink hues. It was cold. I wrapped myself in the sweater I had brought. "Good morning, Olga." Gregory was 60 years old. Perfectly combed gray hair and that serious expression of someone who has seen too many families destroyed by money. He was carrying a brown leather briefcase. What happened? I told him everything, every detail. As I spoke, he opened his briefcase and took out documents. The same documents I had signed years ago when I decided that no one would ever control my life or my assets again. "Let me see if I understand this correctly," Gregory said when I finished. "Your son and his wife began remodeling work on your property without your written consent. They are planning to move in permanently without your authorization, and you found a power of attorney they expect you to sign." "That's right. Do you know what this means legally?" "You tell me." "It means they have committed trespassing, property damage without the owner's authorization, and possibly attempted fraud if they plan to have you sign that power of attorney under false pretenses." He took more papers out of his briefcase. "I have the deeds right here. Everything is solely in your name. Neither Matthew nor anyone else has any legal right to this house. I can draft an immediate eviction order. They have to be out in 48 hours. Do it, Olga, think about it. He's your son. I've already thought about it. All night. During every minute I spent locked in that tiny room while they planned to steal what took me 40 years to build. My voice didn't tremble. Do it, Gregory. Now. He nodded. He took his laptop out of his briefcase. For the next hour, as the sun finished rising and the house remained silent, Gregory drafted the documents. Eviction order. Complaint for damages to private property. Request for an injunction to stop the work. Everything with the official seal, with the laws cited, with the deadline set. "I need a process server to deliver this personally," I said. "Today. This morning. I can make the calls. I have contacts at the courthouse. If I explain that it's urgent, they can come before noon. No, I want it to be at 6 in the morning. Tomorrow, Saturday." Gregory looked at me with that expression he reserved for his most determined clients. "You want them to be woken up with the news. Exactly like they ruined my vacation by arriving unannounced and destroying my house. I want them to feel that same invasion, that same lack of control. It can be done. But Olga, when this happens, there's no going back. Family relationships. There's no family relationship left to save," I interrupted him. "That ended when my son called me selfish for not wanting to give away what cost me a lifetime to earn. When his wife spoke about me as if I were a burden, when they planned to make me sign documents to take away control of my properties." Gregory was silent for a moment. Then he closed his laptop. "All right, I'll make the calls. The officers will be here tomorrow at 6 o'clock sharp. I'm also going to notify the construction company to stop all work immediately or face legal charges. And I'm going to request an inspection of the damages to calculate the compensation Matthew will have to pay you. Compensation? For the material damages. The destroyed cabinets, the damaged floor, the walls. Everything has a cost. Illegally, he is responsible for paying for it. Something stirred inside me. It wasn't joy. It wasn't satisfaction. It was simply the certainty that I was doing the right thing, that after a lifetime of putting myself at the end of the line, after years of sacrificing for others, I was finally choosing myself. Do it all. Gregory left at 7:30. I asked him to use the side entrance so Matthew and Chloe wouldn't see him. I didn't want them to suspect anything yet. I went back into the house. I went up to the small room. I sat on the bed and waited. At 8 o'clock, I heard movement downstairs, footsteps, voices. Matthew on the phone with someone, probably the workers, giving them instructions for the day. Chloe laughing at something. The sound of the coffee maker. I went down at 8:30. When I entered the makeshift kitchen they had set up in a corner of the living room, Chloe was pouring coffee into one of my favorite mugs, that white ceramic one with yellow flowers I bought on my last trip to Asheville. "Good morning. Olga, did you sleep well?" she asked without really looking at me. Focused on her phone. Perfectly, I lied. Matthew walked in. He was wearing a wrinkled shirt and that expression of someone who was fast asleep 5 minutes ago. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important. Tell me. We need you to sign some papers. It's to speed up the work, so the contractors can make changes without having to consult you on every detail. It's just a formality, but legally they need your authorization as the owner." There it was, the moment I had anticipated. I walked over to the table where the papers from last night, still Saturday. I picked up the red folder. I opened it. I took out the blank power of attorney. "Are you talking about this?" Matthew's expression changed. Just for a second, but I saw it. Surprise, discomfort. Then he tried to smile. "Yes, exactly. It's just to make everything easier. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about." I held the paper in front of him. "This isn't an authorization for work. Matthew, this is a full power of attorney that would give you control over all my properties. To sell, mortgage, manage, everything." "Mom, it's not like that. The lawyer said it was necessary to." "What lawyer?" Silence. Chloe stopped looking at her phone. Matthew froze. "There is no lawyer, is there?" My voice remained calm, dangerously calm. "You drafted this yourselves. You downloaded a template from the internet and thought I would sign without reading because I trust you. It's not like that. I'm not signing anything. And I want the work to stop. Today." "Mom, we've already invested money in this. We've already paid deposits." "With what money, Matthew?" "Tell me, with what money did you pay for $120,000 in renovations?" His face turned pale. "How do you know that amount?" "Because unlike you, I do read the papers that are in my own house." Chloe intervened then. Her voice had lost all its sweetness. "Olga, don't be so dramatic. We just want to improve the house. Make it more modern, more livable. When Gloria and my dad move in, they're going to need comforts. No one is moving in here. That's not for you to decide alone." "Yes, it is. It's my house." Chloe slammed the mug down on the table. "You are incredibly selfish. You have 2 properties, and you refuse to share one. Gloria is older than you, she has health problems, and she deserves to live in a decent place. Then you buy a house for Gloria. We can't afford a house on the beach. Not all of us were lucky enough to get properties when they were cheap. It wasn't luck. It was work. 40 years of work." I turned and went up the stairs. I could hear them talking downstairs, their voices rising, arguing about what to do now, about how to convince me. I didn't care. I went into the small room. I locked the door. I sat on the bed and looked at the ceiling. Tomorrow at 6 in the morning, everything would change. And for the first time in a long time, I was going to be the one in control of that change. The rest of Friday passed in a tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Matthew and Chloe spoke in low voices whenever I appeared. The workers arrived at 10 in the morning, and Chloe had to tell them to wait, that there was a small problem with the permits. The men stood outside, smoking, looking at their phones, getting paid by the hour to do nothing. I stayed in my room almost all day. I read, or at least I tried to. The words blurred on the page. My mind was elsewhere, going over every detail of what was to come. Gregory had sent me a text confirming everything. The process servers would arrive at exactly 6 in the morning on Saturday. They would bring the eviction order, the cease and desist for the construction, and the complaint documents. All legal, all irreversible. At 3 in the afternoon, I heard a knock on my door. It was Matthew. "Mom, can we talk?" It wasn't a question. I opened the door. He came in and sat on the only chair in the room, an old wooden chair that used to be in the garage. He looked tired. He had dark circles under his eyes. "I know you're upset," he began. "And I get it. We should have consulted you before starting the work. That was a mistake." I stayed standing, leaning against the wall, waiting. "But you have to understand our situation. Chloe and I have been living in that small apartment for years. We can't have kids there. There's no space. And Gloria really is in poor health. The doctors say the sea air would help her respiratory problems. We thought it would be perfect, that everyone would win." "Everyone wins when I'm locked in a 9x9 room?" I asked. "It wouldn't be forever, just until you got used to it. Then we could make a schedule, take turns. You come some months, we come other months. It's my house, Matthew. There don't have to be turns, but it'll be mine someday, right? When you're gone, this house is going to be my inheritance. Why not start enjoying it now?" Those words hung in the air. When I'm gone, as if he was just waiting for me to die so he could take what was mine. As if my life was just an obstacle between him and his plans. "Get out of my room," I said quietly. "Mom, just be reasonable. Get out, now." He stood up. There was something in his eyes, something between frustration and contempt. He left without closing the door. I closed it behind him and locked it again. I barely ate dinner that night. I went down at 8, made some tea, and went back up. From my window, I could see Matthew's truck, parked. The lights in the house were still on. I heard their voices, muffled, constant, planning, always planning. I went to bed early, but I couldn't sleep. I checked the clock every hour. 11 at night, 12, 1 in the morning, 2. At 3, I finally fell into a restless sleep filled with confusing images. My husband, the house when I first bought it. Empty and full of possibilities. Matthew as a child, before he became this. I woke up at 5:30. Half an hour before the officers were due to arrive. I dressed with care. Black pants, gray blouse, the sweater my sister gave me 2 Christmases ago. I brushed my hair. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was 71 years old. Wrinkles around her eyes, age spots on her hands. But she also had something else. Determination, strength, dignity. I went downstairs. The house was dark and silent. I made myself a coffee in the provisional coffee maker they had set up. I sat in the olive green armchair and waited. At 6 o'clock sharp, I heard the vehicles. 2 SUVs parked in front of the house. I saw the lights through the window. 4 people got out, 2 uniformed process servers and 2 witnesses, as required by law. They were carrying clipboards, cameras, electronic tablets. I opened the door before they knocked. "Good morning. I was expecting you." The senior officer, a man in his 50s with a gray mustache, nodded. "You are Mrs. Olga, the owner of this residence?" "Yes. We have legal documents that must be served to a Mr. Matthew and a Miss Chloe." "Are they on the property?" "They're sleeping upstairs." "I need you to wake them, please. The notification must be done in person." I went up the stairs. My heart was beating fast, but my steps were firm. I reached the guest room where they were sleeping. I knocked on the door. Once, twice, 3 times. "What is it?" Matthew's voice was groggy, half asleep. "I need you to come downstairs. There are people here who need to talk to you." "What? What time is it?" 6 in the morning. "Get down here. Now." I heard movement inside. Murmurs. Chloe asking what was happening. I waited upstairs until they came out, both in pajamas, hair disheveled, with expressions of confusion and annoyance. We went downstairs together. When Matthew saw the officers in the living room, he stopped cold. "What is this?" The officer stepped forward. "Are you Matthew, son of Mrs. Olga?" "Yes, but I have an eviction order issued by the civil court. You and anyone under your responsibility have 48 hours to vacate this property. Here is the official documentation." He handed him a thick envelope. Matthew took it with trembling hands. He opened it. He started to read. His face went from confusion to disbelief, and finally to rage. "This is insane. Mom, what did you do? I'm protecting what's mine. I'm your son. And this is my house. A house you decided to destroy without my permission." Chloe had started to cry. Not silent tears, but dramatic, exaggerated sobs. "I can't believe this. How can you do this to us? We were going to bring Gloria here. We promised her a better life." "That's not my problem," I said, and the words came out colder than I expected. The officer continued. "I also have a cease and desist order for the construction. Any remodeling, building, or modification must stop immediately. Mrs. Olga has filed a complaint for damages to private property. An inspector will be here on Monday to assess the damages and determine the corresponding compensation." "Compensation?" Matthew stared at me as if he didn't know me. "You're going to sue us? Your own family?" "There is no family anymore," I replied. "That was clear when I found the power of attorney you planned to have me sign. When you called me selfish for not wanting to give away what took me 40 years to get, this is a mistake. We can fix this. We can talk. There's nothing left to talk about. You have until Monday at 6 in the morning to be out." The officers finished serving all the documents. They took photographs of the house, of the damages, of the incomplete work. They had Matthew and Chloe sign the acknowledgments of service. Everything was documented, legal, irreversible. When they left, Matthew stood in the middle of the living room, holding the papers, looking at me with an expression I had never seen before. Hate. Pure hate. "You're going to regret this," he said in a low, tense voice. "I don't think so. Everyone is going to know what kind of mother you are. What kind of heartless person throws her own son out onto the street? You're not on the street. You have your apartment. You have your life. The only thing you don't have is my house." Chloe was still crying, now sitting on the floor, hugging her knees. "We promised Gloria. What are we going to tell her? We already sold some of our furniture to pay the deposits for the work." Something in that sentence caught my attention. "You sold your furniture to pay for the work?" Matthew didn't answer. He looked away. "With what money did you plan to finish the remodeling?" "The estimates total $120,000. Silence. Then I understood. They never had the money. They had planned to start the work and then convince me to pay, or to sign that power of attorney so they could mortgage my house and get the money. It had all been a trap from the beginning. "Get out of my sight," I said finally. "Pack your things and leave today. I don't want to see you here one more minute." "We have 48 hours, Matthew spat. "Legally, yes, but morally, you're no longer welcome here." I went up to my room and locked the door. I sat on the bed and finally, after 2 days of holding back, I let the tears come. I wasn't crying for them. I was crying for the family I thought I had, one that never really existed. I didn't leave my room all day. I listened to the comings and goings of Matthew and Chloe, their heavy footsteps up and down the stairs, the sound of boxes being dragged, doors slamming. Sometimes I heard Chloe on the phone, her sharp voice cutting through the walls. Words like cruel, unfair, ungrateful old woman reached me in fragments. I didn't care. I had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. For the first time in my life, I had chosen my peace over the approval of others. And even though it hurt, even though I felt that emptiness in my chest that comes with final goodbyes, I also felt something else, something light, freedom. At 5 in the afternoon, there was a knock on my door. It was Matthew again. "Mom, I need to talk to you. Please." His voice sounded different, softer, almost pleading. I didn't answer. I heard him wait a few seconds and then walk away. His footsteps faded down the stairs. When it got dark, I finally went downstairs. The house was strangely silent. I went to the makeshift kitchen, made a cup of tea, and sat in my armchair. From there, I could see Matthew's truck loaded with suitcases and boxes. Chloe was sitting in the passenger seat, staring at her phone, illuminated by the screen's glow. Matthew came out of the house with another box. He saw me in the armchair. He stopped. "We're almost done. We're leaving tonight." I nodded without saying anything. Chloe is devastated. Her parents are, too. We had to tell Gloria the house wasn't available after all. She cried for an hour. "It was never available, Matthew. Because it was never yours to begin with." You know what the worst part of all this is? He took a step closer. "I thought you were different. I thought, despite everything, my mother was a good person. But it turns out, you only care about yourself. I only care about myself." I set the teacup on the table. "I worked double shifts for years to pay for your college. I lent you $30,000 for your car that you never paid back. I paid for your wedding when you said you didn't have enough. And now, because I won't let you steal my house, I'm selfish. We weren't stealing anything. We just wanted to share. Sharing is when you ask permission. What you did was an invasion. Whatever you want to call it." He lifted the box again. "But don't think this is over. Everyone is going to know what you did. Your friends, the neighbors, the family. They're going to know what kind of person you are. Tell them whatever you want, Matthew. The truth always comes out." He left without another word. 10 minutes later, I heard the truck's engine. I watched the taillights disappear down the road. And then, for the first time in 2 days, the house was completely silent. My house. My space. Mine again. I stayed up late, walking through the rooms. The master bedroom, torn apart, with half-painted walls and holes in the drywall. The kitchen without cabinets, with wires hanging and the floor torn up. I mentally calculated the damages. Not just the cost to repair, but the time, the effort to find the right workers, to supervise every detail. But it was worth it. It was all worth it if it meant getting my peace back. On Sunday, I woke to the sound of the waves. I opened all the windows. I let the fresh sea air pour in. I called Gregory. "How are you?" he asked. "Better. They're gone. Matthew and Chloe. Left last night. They didn't wait the 48 hours. Good. The inspector is coming tomorrow, Monday, at 9. He'll document everything. Then we can proceed with the lawsuit for damages. How much do you think it will be?" Hard to say without the assessment, but based on what you told me, between $15,000 and $20,000 easily. Those custom cabinets you had were expensive. The tile floor, too. Not to mention the structural damage to the walls. $20,000. An amount Matthew didn't have. A debt that would follow him for years. Part of me felt a pang of guilt for a second. But then I remembered the power of attorney, the plans to mortgage my house without my knowledge, the way they spoke of me as if I were a burden. The guilt vanished. "Proceed with everything, Gregory. I want them to pay for every last cent." "I will. I also want to recommend something. Update your will. Now, make everything crystal clear and specific. It's all already in the name of the Retired Nurses Foundation. I know, but let's add stronger clauses, specifying that no family member can contest the will, that any attempt to do so will result in automatic disqualification. There are legal ways to armor plate your wishes. Do it, whatever it takes." I hung up and went out to the deck. The sea was calm, glittering under the morning Sunday. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to just be there, breathing, existing without tension. My phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated but answered. "Olga?" It was a woman's voice, older, with an accent similar to mine, but rougher. "Who's speaking?" "It's Gloria, Chloe's mom." My body tensed immediately. "How did you get my number?" "That doesn't matter. I need to talk to you, woman to woman, mother to mother. We have nothing to talk about. Please, just hear me out for 1 minute." Her voice sounded tired, weak. "I know what happened. I know Matthew and Chloe made mistakes. But I had nothing to do with that. I'm just a sick woman who dreamed of living her last years by the sea. I'm sorry for your situation, but that's not my responsibility. I'm 73 years old. Heart problems. Asthma. The doctors say the city air is killing me. When Chloe told me they had gotten a house on the beach, I thought it was a miracle. I sold my few things. I told my friends I was moving. And now? And now you have to face the fact that your daughter lied to you, that she promised you something that was never hers to give. You are very cruel. No, Gloria, I'm realistic. And I'm tired of people asking me to sacrifice myself for problems they created. Someday you're going to be old, sick, in need, and then you'll understand. I am already old, Gloria. I'm already at the age where illnesses arrive unannounced. But the difference is, I worked my whole life so I could take care of myself, so I wouldn't have to depend on anyone or ask anyone to give me what isn't theirs. I hung up before she could reply. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from rage. How dare Gloria call me, try to make me feel guilty for not giving away my life savings. The phone rang again, the same number. I didn't answer. It rang 5 more times over the next hour. Then the calls stopped, but the texts began. Gloria, Chloe, even numbers I didn't recognize, all with the same tone. Accusations of cruelty, of coldness, of selfishness. Long, dramatic messages about broken families, shattered dreams, sick old women without a home. I blocked every number, each one, without reading the full messages, without responding. That night, as I ate dinner alone on the deck watching the sunset, my phone vibrated with a notification. Facebook. I had been tagged in a post. It was from Chloe. I opened it. It was a photo of Gloria, sitting in what looked like a hospital bed, wearing an oxygen mask. The text read, "My mother is hospitalized with an asthma attack. All from the stress of losing the home we promised her, thanks to the cruelty of certain people who only think of themselves. Money and property won't keep you company when you're all alone." It already had 50 comments, mostly from people I didn't know, Chloe's friends, expressing outrage, offering support, cursing the heartless woman. I stared at the post for long minutes. Part of me wanted to respond, to defend my side, to explain everything. But then I remembered something a colleague from the hospital once told me. The people who need to create public drama are the ones who have no valid private arguments. I closed the app without commenting, without liking, without sharing, without responding. Absolute silence, because I knew something Chloe didn't understand yet. The truth doesn't need to scream to be heard. It just needs time and patience. And I had both. On Monday at 9 o'clock sharp, the inspector arrived. He was a man in his 40s, thin, with thick glasses and a tablet in his hand. He introduced himself as Adrian, a state-certified civil engineer. He had a professional camera hanging from his neck and a tape measure on his belt. "Good morning, Mrs. Olga. I'm here for the damage assessment." I let him in. I watched as he went through each room with almost obsessive meticulousness. He took photos from multiple angles. He measured every hole in the walls. He checked the exposed electrical wires. He took non-stop notes on his tablet. He spent the most time in the kitchen. He ran his fingers along the edges where the cabinets had been ripped out. He inspected the water and gas connections left exposed. He took out a moisture meter and ran it along the walls. "There's structural damage here," he said, pointing to a corner. "When they removed the cabinets, they damaged the waterproofing. There's already moisture seeping in. This will require specialized work. How serious is it? If it's not treated soon, in 6 months you'll have mold all over this wall. And repairing mold is 3 times more expensive than preventing the seepage." He continued to the master bedroom. The damage there was even more obvious. The walls were not only half painted, but they had removed parts of the drywall to modernize according to Matthew's plans. Now there were areas where you could see the bare, vulnerable, porous brick. "Do you have the original invoices for the materials you installed?" Adrian asked. "Yes, I have everything filed." "Perfect. That will help me calculate the exact replacement cost." We spent 3 full hours on the inspection. When he finished, Adrian sat with me at the dining room table and opened a document on his tablet. "I'm going to be honest with you, Mrs. Olga. The damage is considerable. It's not just a matter of reinstalling what they took out. There is structural damage that needs to be repaired first. Moisture seepage, dangerously manipulated electrical connections, gas pipes installed that violate building codes. Give me a number. $32,000. That's my conservative estimate to repair everything to its original state. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. $32,000. More than double what Gregory had estimated. Are you sure? Completely. And that's not counting the cost of additional inspections the county will require now that structural damage has been documented. It could easily go up to $35,000. I leaned back in my chair. $35,000. Matthew could never pay that. He worked in sales. He made decent money but lived on the edge, always spending more than he had. This would ruin him financially for years. I'm going to send the full report to your lawyer today, Adrian continued, with all the photographs, measurements, and the cost breakdown. If you're going to proceed legally, this is solid evidence. After he left, I called Gregory. $35,000, I said when he answered. There was silence on the other end. That's much more than we thought. I know. Olga, I need to ask you something important. Do you really want to go all the way with this? $35,000 is an amount that could financially destroy Matthew. We're talking about wage garnishments affecting his credit history for years. Are you asking me to forgive him? I'm asking if you're prepared for the consequences, not just for him, but for you. This is going to get public. There will be a trial. It will be in public records. People are going to have opinions. Let them. All right. Then we'll proceed. I'll file the suit this week. Matthew will be served in about 10 days. I hung up and went for a walk on the beach. The sun was high, burning. I walked for an hour, letting the water lap at my feet, feeling the hot sand under my soles. I tried to order my thoughts, my emotions, but everything was a whirlwind. Was I being cruel? Probably. Was I being fair? Absolutely. When I got back to the house, there was a car parked outside. A brown sedan I recognized immediately. It was Lydia, my best friend of 30 years, my colleague from the hospital. She was sitting on the deck, waiting. She was 72, with stark white hair cut in a modern style, and that look of concern I knew so well. Lydia, what are you doing here? I heard what happened. Well, part of the story, at least. Chloe has been posting all over social media, and you know how it is. Everyone is talking. I sat down next to her. What is she saying? That you threw your son out on the street? That your daughter-in-law's mother is hospitalized from the stress? That you preferred your house to be empty rather than have your family close? She paused. But I know you. And I know that if you got to this point, it's because you had your reasons. I told her everything, every detail. The work without permission, the power of attorney, the plans to mortgage my house, the way they spoke to me. Everything. Lydia listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. When I finished, she sighed deeply. You did the right thing. You think so? Olga, I've spent 30 years watching you sacrifice for that boy. You paid for his education, his debts, his wedding. And now they wanted your house. Where does it end? When is it enough? But he's my son, and you're his mother, not his personal bank, not his property. You have a right to have boundaries. People hate me on social media. People on social media hate everything. Tomorrow, they'll be outraged about something else. But you have to live with your decisions. Not them. Lydia stayed all afternoon. We made coffee, ate cookies she had brought, and talked about everything and nothing. Her grandkids, my plans to fix the house, the new series we were both watching. When she left at dusk, she hugged me tight. You're not alone in this. Remember that. That night, I checked Facebook again. Chloe's post now had 200 comments. It had grown, gone viral in our local circles. People sharing stories of families destroyed by greed, comparing my case to others, opining without knowing the facts. There were even screenshots circulating. Someone had found my profile and shared my photo, my full name. The comments on those posts were worse. Bitter old woman, I hope she dies alone. That's the face of evil. For the first time, I felt real fear. Not of Matthew or Chloe, but of this anonymous mob of people who hated me without knowing me, who had decided I was the monster in this story, based solely on Chloe's manipulated version. I thought about responding, about posting my own version, showing the photos of the damage, explaining the power of attorney, defending my name. But then I remembered something else Lydia once told me. Never stoop to fight with people who bought tickets to see you fall. I closed the app. I deactivated my Facebook account completely. If people wanted to believe lies, that was their problem. I knew the truth, and the people who really mattered knew it too. On Tuesday, Gregory sent me a text. Lawsuit filed. Matthew will be served on Thursday, 2 days. In 2 days, my son would receive legal documents suing him for $35,000. In 2 days, this would stop being family drama and become an official legal matter, with case files and court dates and real consequences. I made myself a chamomile tea and went out to the deck. The stars were incredibly bright that night. The full moon was reflected on the water, creating a path of silver light. I thought about my husband, dead for 15 years. I thought about everything we had planned for our old age, plans that evaporated when the hidden debts came to light after his funeral. I thought about how I had to rebuild my life from scratch at 56, working extra shifts, saving every penny, finally buying this house with my own effort. No one gave me anything. No one made my path easy. And now that I finally had something of my own, something I earned with my sweat, I was supposed to just hand it over without a fight. No, never again. On Thursday afternoon, Matthew called. I didn't answer. He called 4 more times. Then the texts came. I got the lawsuit. I can't believe you went this far. $35,000. Mom, do you know what that means? I'm going to lose everything. There's still time to fix this. Drop the lawsuit and let's talk. I didn't answer any of them. I blocked his number, too. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. No nightmares, no waking up every hour, no tightness in my chest. Because I had finally understood something fundamental. Choosing myself didn't make me a bad person. It made me free. The following week was strangely quiet. No calls, no texts, no drama. It was as if, after the lawsuit, everyone understood there was no turning back. Or maybe they were just regrouping, planning their next move. I hired a construction company to start the repairs. The foreman, a man named Vince, around 60, with huge hands and a gravelly voice, inspected the damage and whistled low. Whoever did this had no idea what they were doing. Look here. They cut a load-bearing wire without even shutting off the breaker. They could have started a fire. How long will it take to fix everything? 6 weeks, minimum, maybe 8. We have to wait for the county to approve the structural repair permits before we can start on the cosmetic stuff. Go ahead, do what you have to do. The workers arrived the following Monday. The sound of drills and hammers filled the house again. But this time it was different. This time, I was in control. This time, every decision went through me. Vince consulted me on everything. The paint color, the style of the cabinets, the type of tile for the floor. I showed him photographs of how it was before, and he promised to leave it better than the original. It's going to be beautiful, Mrs. Olga. You'll see. 2 weeks after filing the suit, Gregory called. Matthew wants to negotiate. Negotiate what? He's offering to pay $10,000 if you drop the lawsuit. He says it's all he can get. The debt is $35,000. I know. But he argues he doesn't have any more. That he had to borrow from a bank to scrape together that $10,000. That if you insist on the full amount, he'll have to declare bankruptcy. That's not my problem. Legally, no. But Olga, I need you to understand something. If he goes bankrupt, you won't see a cent. On the other hand, if you accept the $10,000 now, at least you recover something. It's not about the money, Gregory. It was never about the money. I know, but I had to present the offer. It's my obligation as your lawyer. Tell him no. Either he pays the $35,000 or we'll see him in court. There was a long pause. All right, I'll communicate your decision. After hanging up, I kept thinking. $10,000. It was more than I expected Matthew to be able to pull together honestly. He had probably borrowed from everyone he knew, hawked things, made desperate financial maneuvers. But accepting that amount would be like saying what he did was okay, that with a little money, he could buy forgiveness. He could erase the invasion, the disrespect, the plans to steal control of my life. No, this was about more than money. It was about dignity. 3 days later, Lydia came to visit again. This time, she brought Clara, another friend from the hospital, a petite woman of 68 with the energy of someone of 40. "I came to see how the repairs are going," Clara said, inspecting the kitchen. "It looks good, professional. Vince and his team are excellent." We sat on the deck with coffee. Clara looked at the sea for a long moment before speaking. "You know, your story made it all the way to the hospital." "What? The young nurses are talking about you?" At first, many of them believed the social media version, but then some of the ones who worked with you started talking about what you were really like. Your work ethic, your dedication, the years you sacrificed. And what are they saying now? That you did the right thing, that they wish they had your courage to set boundaries with their own families. Clara took a sip of coffee. One of them, Maribel, do you remember her? She said her son took all her savings for a business that never worked out. Now she has to work extra shifts at 70 because she can't retire. I didn't know that. Nobody knows. Because she's ashamed. But you have nothing to be ashamed of, Olga. What you did was defend yourself, Lydia added. And the narrative on social media has started to change, too. Someone shared screenshots of conversations where Chloe admitted they were planning the work without your permission. I don't know who it was, but it's going viral. What? Yes? Apparently, someone close to them got fed up with the lies and leaked real messages. Now people are starting to question Chloe's version. That night, I searched online, even though I had sworn not to check social media again. The screenshots were everywhere. WhatsApp conversations where Chloe told a friend, "The old woman won't even find out until it's already done. By then, she won't be able to do anything." Another message where Matthew wrote, "My mom will just have to accept it. After all, it's all going to be mine someday anyway." The comments had changed drastically. Now people were apologizing for judging me. Others were criticizing Chloe for being manipulative. Some were even sharing their own stories of abusive family members. But the most shocking thing was a post from Gloria, Chloe's mother. A long message where she admitted she was never really hospitalized, that the photo was old from another emergency last year, that Chloe had convinced her to use it to generate pity, that she now regretted lending herself to that manipulation. "I should not have allowed my daughter to use my health to attack another woman," Gloria wrote. Olga had every right to protect her property. We were wrong. I read that message 3 times. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel victory. I just felt a deep exhaustion. All this circus, all this public drama, all this pain could have been avoided if, from the very beginning, Matthew had just had the decency to ask me instead of deciding for me. The next day, I received a call from an unknown number. This time, I answered. "Mrs. Olga?" It was a young woman's voice. Professional. "Yes, I'm a reporter from the local paper. We're doing a story on financial family abuse, and we'd like to interview you about your case." "No, thank you. It would be an opportunity to tell your side directly. Many seniors are going through similar situations, and your story could help them. My story is not for public consumption, and the people who needed to know my side already do. Are you sure? The article is going to be published anyway. It would be better if—" I hung up. I didn't need public validation. I didn't need to be a trend or an example or an inspiration. I just needed my peace. That night, Gregory called me again. Matthew raised his offer to $15,000. He says it's the absolute most he can get without completely ruining himself. What do you recommend as my lawyer? As your lawyer, I'm telling you that accepting guarantees you'll receive something. Going to trial is a long, expensive process, and there's no guarantee you can collect the full judgment even if you win. And as my friend? Gregory sighed. As my friend, I'm telling you that this young man needs to learn that actions have consequences. That he can't destroy someone's property, not even his mother's, and get away with it by paying a fraction of the damage. Then we're going to trial. All right. The date is set for 5 weeks from now. I'm going to need you there, testifying. It's going to be hard, I know, but I've already crossed the point of no return. There's no easy way back. There never was, Olga. From the moment you decided to defend yourself, there was only one way. Forward. I hung up and looked out the window. The repair work was moving along well. The kitchen was starting to take shape again. The master bedroom had smooth walls, ready for paint. Soon, the house would be whole again. Better than before, actually. And I would be whole, too. Different, scarred, but whole. Because I had learned something fundamental in these months. Sometimes loving means letting go. And sometimes protecting yourself means being willing to be called cruel. The price of dignity has always been high, but the cost of losing it is infinitely higher. The 5 weeks leading up to the trial passed in a strange mix of routine and anxiety. The repairs progressed perfectly. Vince and his team worked with meticulous precision. The kitchen ended up even better than before, with solid, honey-toned wood cabinets and cream-colored granite countertops. The master bedroom recovered its essence, with walls painted in a soft peach color that caught the morning light. But while the house was healing, I was preparing for the final battle. Gregory came by every week to go over my testimony. He asked me the questions Matthew's lawyer would likely ask. The difficult ones, the personal ones, the ones designed to make me look like the villain. Is it true your son visited you regularly before this? Yes. And that you promised the house would be his inheritance one day? I said that eventually everything would be his when I died. Not that he could take it while I was still alive. But he's your only son. Don't you think it's cruel to sue him for improving a property that will be his anyway? He wasn't improving. He was destroying, and he was doing it without permission, planning to take away control of my own assets. Gregory would nod after each answer. Good. Keep that tone. Calm, but firm. Don't let them provoke you emotionally. The night before the trial, I couldn't sleep. I stayed on the deck until 3 a.m, listening to the waves, watching the stars, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The years of sacrifice, the broken promises, the final invasion that shattered any illusion of a functional family. At 6 a.m, I got up and dressed with care. Black pants, an ivory-colored blouse, a gray blazer that made me look professional and serious. I pulled my hair back into a low bun. No jewelry except my wedding ring, the one I had never taken off despite everything. Gregory picked me up at 8. The courthouse was 2 hours away. We spoke little during the drive. He reviewed documents on his tablet. I stared out the window, watching the landscape pass by, preparing myself mentally. We arrived at 10. The courthouse was an old concrete building, with hallways that smelled of dampness and old paper. The courtroom was on the 2nd floor. When we walked in, Matthew was already there. It was the first time I had seen him in almost 2 months. He looked different. Thinner, with deep dark circles, his hair grayer than I remembered. He was sitting with his lawyer, a young man in an ill-fitting suit who was shuffling papers with a nervous expression. Our eyes met for a second. In his, I saw something that surprised me. It wasn't hate. It was sadness. A deep sadness, as if he finally understood that this was real, that he had lost something he could never get back. I looked away first. I sat with Gregory on the opposite side of the room. Chloe wasn't there. Gregory had warned me she probably wouldn't come, that she wasn't legally required to since the lawsuit was only against Matthew. But her absence spoke volumes. She had left my son to face the consequences of their joint decisions alone. The judge entered at 10:30. She was a woman in her 50s, with short hair and an expression that revealed nothing. She sat, reviewed the documents, and began. We are here for the case of Olga versus Matthew. Complaint for damages to private property. Mr. Gregory, you may begin. Gregory presented the case with surgical precision. The photographs of the damage projected onto a large screen. The inspector's report. The original quotes proving Matthew had planned $120,000 in work without authorization. The power of attorney I found as evidence of attempted fraud. Every word, every document, every photograph built an irrefutable case. I watched as the judge's expression changed subtly. A slight frown when she saw the destroyed walls. An almost imperceptible shake of her head when Gregory showed the blank power of attorney. Then it was Matthew's lawyer's turn. A kid who couldn't have been older than 30, clearly out of his league, trying to argue that his client's intentions were good, that he just wanted to improve the family property, that the misunderstanding got out of hand. My client acted with the well-being of the entire family in mind, including his mother, he said, in a voice that tried to sound convincing. The planned improvements would have significantly increased the property's value. The judge cut him off. Did your client have written authorization from the owner to perform these improvements? No, Your Honor. But did he consult with the owner before starting the work? The family circumstances are complex. Answer the question, yes or no. No, Your Honor. Continue. The young lawyer tried to change focus, to talk about broken family relationships, generational misunderstandings, about how a mother was destroying her son out of pride. But every argument sounded more desperate than the last. Then it was my turn to testify. I approached the stand. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Saturday. I took a deep breath. I looked at the judge, avoiding Matthew's eyes. Gregory asked me the questions we had practiced. I told the whole story. How I bought the house, how much it cost me, what it meant to me, how I arrived to find the unauthorized work. The conversation with Matthew, where he informed me they were moving in permanently. The power of attorney they planned for me to sign. My voice didn't shake. I didn't cry. I presented the facts with the same professional clarity I used at the hospital when reporting on a critical patient's status. Then it was Matthew's lawyer's turn to cross-examine me. Mrs. Olga, is it true your son visited you frequently before this incident? Yes, every 2 or 3 months. And that you had a good relationship? I thought we did. Now I see I was mistaken. Don't you think you're being too hard on your only son? That $35,000 is an amount that could ruin him? I think $35,000 is what it costs to repair the damage he caused. I didn't choose that amount. His actions did. But he's your son, and this is my house. A house I bought with 40 years of work. He is my son, but that doesn't give him the right to take what isn't his. Did you ever consider just forgiving him? Letting it go without consequences? I considered many things. But then I remembered that spending years teaching him that actions don't have consequences is exactly what got us here. I saw Matthew lower his head. His shoulders shook slightly. He was crying silently. Part of me, that maternal part that never fully dies, wanted to get up and hug him, to tell him it would be okay, that I forgave him, that I would drop the lawsuit. But I didn't, because loving him also meant letting him face the consequences of his decisions. It meant not rescuing him one more time. It meant allowing him to grow up, even if the growing hurt. The cross-examination continued for 20 more minutes, but I answered every question with the same calm. The lawyer finally gave up, and I was allowed to step down. Gregory presented his closing arguments. Matthew's lawyer did the same, with less conviction than when he started. The judge took 15 minutes to review everything. The silence in the room was absolute. You could only hear the hum of the air conditioning and the occasional rustle of paper. Finally, she spoke. I have reviewed all the evidence presented. The damages to the property are extensively documented. There was no written authorization for the work performed. The attempt to obtain a power of attorney under questionable circumstances is particularly troubling. She paused. She looked directly at Matthew. Mr. Matthew, regardless of your intentions, you caused significant damage to a property that does not belong to you. The fact that it is your mother's property does not absolve you of legal responsibility. Another pause. I find in favor of the plaintiff. The defendant is ordered to pay the amount of $35,000 in compensation for damages. You have 6 months to make the payment in full, or a lien will be placed on your assets. The gavel struck the desk. The sound echoed in the room like a thunderclap. I had won. But looking at my son, his head in his hands, crying silently while his lawyer spoke to him in a low voice, I felt nothing like victory. I only felt the weight of a relationship that had died that day in that cold courtroom, and the certainty that there was no going back. I left the courthouse in silence. Gregory walked beside me, satisfied with the result, talking about the next legal steps to ensure collection of the judgment. I barely heard him. My eyes were still seeing the image of Matthew with his head in his hands. Destroyed. Olga, are you okay? Gregory asked when we reached the parking lot. Yes, just tired. You won. This is what we wanted. I know, but it didn't feel like winning. It felt like closing a book I never wanted to finish. The drive back was quiet. Gregory tried to make conversation a couple of times, but eventually understood I needed to be alone with my thoughts. We arrived at the house at 4 in the afternoon. The work was completely finished. Vince and his team had left everything spotless before they left. I walked in slowly. The kitchen gleamed with its new cabinets and shining floor. The master bedroom was perfect, with the soft peach-colored walls and my grandmother's armoire restored to its place. Everything was better than before. Perfect, empty. I sat in the olive-green armchair, and for the first time in months, I let the tears come freely. I cried for the family I lost, for the son I thought I had, who turned out to be a stranger, for the years wasted believing that sacrifice earned gratitude. The phone rang. It was Lydia. How did it go? I won. $35,000. 6 months to pay. Olga, that's good. It's justice. Then why doesn't it feel like it? Because you're a mother. And even though he betrayed you, even though he hurt you, you still love him. That doesn't go away with a court judgment. I should hate him, but you don't. And that makes you human, not weak. We talked for an hour. Lydia told me stories from the hospital, meaningless gossip, everyday things that anchored me back to reality. When we hung up, I felt a little better. Not good, but better. That night, I made dinner for the first time in weeks. Simple pasta with tomato sauce, a salad, toasted bread. I ate on the deck, watching the sunset. The sky was painted in oranges and pinks as the sun sank into the horizon. Over the next few days, I tried to establish a new routine. Morning walks on the beach, reading in the afternoons, calls with Lydia and Clara, trying to fill the void with activities, with movement, with anything to distract me from the deafening silence. 2 weeks after the trial, I received a certified envelope in the mail. I opened it with trembling hands. It was a check, $15,000, and a handwritten letter on crumpled paper. Mom, this is all the money I could get for now. I sold my car, took out loans. I asked everyone I could for help. I will pay the other $20,000 in monthly installments over the next few months. I know you don't believe me, but I will. Not because the law is forcing me, but because I need to prove to you that I still have some dignity. I know I hurt you. I know I betrayed your trust. And I know you'll probably never forgive me. But I need you to know that I get it. I understood that what we did was wrong, that we were selfish, manipulative, and cruel. Chloe and I are getting a divorce. She never accepted that what we did was wrong. She still blames you for everything. I was finally able to see the truth. I worked my whole life with the expectation that your property would one day be mine, and it made me feel entitled to it ahead of time. I never valued your effort, because I always saw your achievements as my future inheritance. You were right about everything, and I am deeply sorry I put you through this. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I am paying and that I finally learned the lesson. Your son, Matthew. I read the letter 3 times. The words blurred through the tears that fell onto the paper. It wasn't a full apology. It didn't erase the damage, but it was something. It was acknowledgement. It was a start. I put the check away. I put the letter away. And for the first time, I considered the possibility that maybe, in some distant future, there could be something like forgiveness. But not now. Not yet. The following week, Matthew kept his word. Every month, a check arrived. $1,000. Sometimes $1,500 when he could manage more. Never with a letter. Just the money and a brief note. Month 1, month 2, month 3, I deposited each check and kept the notes in a box. I didn't respond. I didn't call. I simply received and waited. The story eventually faded from social media. Other controversies, other dramas took its place. People forgot, as they always do. But the people close to me didn't forget. Lydia and Clara continued to visit regularly. Other former colleagues from the hospital started coming by, too. The beach house became a gathering place for women of my generation, all with similar stories of complicated families, of violated boundaries, of having to choose between being loved and being respected. We shared coffee, stories, laughter. And in those gatherings, I found something I didn't expect. A new family. A chosen one, not one imposed by blood. 6 months after the trial, the debt was paid. Matthew had fulfilled every last cent. The last check came with a longer note. Mom, today I finished paying what I owed you. I know the money doesn't repair the emotional damage, but it was the only tangible thing I could do. I've been in therapy these past few months, working on understanding why I acted that way, why I felt so entitled to your life. I'm better, different. I'm not asking you to believe me, only that someday, if you want, you give me the chance to show you. I'm going to respect your space. I won't call or visit unless you ask. But I want you to know that I understood. I finally understood that being your son didn't give me rights over your life. I love you, Mom, even if I don't have the right to say it anymore. Matthew. I put the letter with the others. The box was full now, of notes, cash checks, evidence of a debt paid. That night, I went out to the deck with a glass of wine. The sea was calm, reflecting the full moon like a liquid mirror. I thought about the entire journey. The pain, the betrayal, the legal battle, the loneliness, and I realized something fundamental. I had survived. More than that, I had prevailed. Not because I had won money or a court judgment, but because I had kept my dignity intact, because I had chosen to respect myself, even when it meant losing the people I loved. The house no longer felt empty. It felt mine, completely, absolutely mine. Every corner, every wall, every window, paid for with my effort, defended with my courage, inhabited by my peace. And that, finally, was enough. A year after the trial, everything had changed, and nothing had changed. The house was perfect, restored, full of light. I was still there, living my life with a tranquility I hadn't known in decades. I had updated my will, just as Gregory suggested. Everything would go to the Retired Nurses Foundation, with ironclad clauses preventing any family member from contesting it. The house, the apartment in the city, my savings, all of it earmarked to help women who dedicated their lives to caring for others and deserved dignity in their old age. Matthew knew. Not from me, but because legal documents required notifying potential heirs of the changes. He never said a word about it, never asked for an explanation. He simply accepted the consequences of his decisions. We still didn't speak. He respected the space I had asked for. I respected his process of change from a distance. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it also wasn't the hate I once feared I would feel. It was simply acceptance. Acceptance that some relationships don't survive certain betrayals, and that's okay. One afternoon in October, almost 14 months after it all, I was on the deck reading when I heard a car park. I looked up, expecting to see Lydia or Clara. Instead, I saw the figure of Matthew getting out of a small car I didn't recognize. He looked different, thinner, his hair completely gray now, but with something in his posture I hadn't seen before. Humility. He approached slowly, like someone approaching a wounded animal, careful not to startle. "Mom," he said, when he reached the foot of the deck, "I know I don't have the right to be here. I know you asked for space, but I needed to tell you something in person." I didn't answer. I just looked at him, waiting. "I'm moving. I got a job in another city. It's a fresh start, a chance to build something without the expectations of the past. I wanted you to know before I left. When are you going?" "Next week." I nodded. "I hope it goes well for you." "Me too." He hesitated for a moment. "And I wanted to give you this." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "It's not money, it's a letter. Read it when you want, or never, if you prefer. But I needed to write it." He placed the envelope on the deck table and turned to leave. Then he stopped. "One last thing. Thank you. For what? For not letting me get away with it. For teaching me the hardest but most necessary lesson of my life. For loving me enough to let me face the consequences." His voice broke, just slightly. "I was a terrible son, but you never stopped being a good mother, even when you had to hurt me to save me." He left before I could answer. I watched his car drive away until it completely disappeared. The envelope sat on the table for 2 days. Every time I walked by, I looked at it, but I didn't open it. Finally, one night after dinner, I did. The letter was 3 pages, handwritten. Matthew detailed his therapy process, The things he had discovered about himself, about how the expectation of an inheritance had turned him into someone who saw his own mother as a temporary obstacle rather than a person. He talked about his divorce from Chloe, about how she never accepted responsibility, and how that finally showed him that he had chosen a partner who reflected his worst qualities. But the last page was what made me cry. Mom, I spent my whole life expecting an inheritance, expecting you to give me things, expecting you to solve my problems. I never once asked what I was giving you. I never valued your company, your wisdom, your unconditional love. I only saw the material things. And when I finally lost everything, when I was left without the car, the marriage, the expectations, I found something I had never looked for: myself. I discovered that I can build my own life, that I don't need to wait for someone to die to start living. And that lesson, as painful as it was the greatest gift you could have ever given me. I don't know if you'll ever be able to forgive me. I don't know if we'll ever have a relationship again. But I need you to know that I respect you more now than ever, because you had the courage to set boundaries when I had no courage to respect any. I love you, Mom. And this time, I mean it with no expectations attached. I folded the letter carefully and put it in the box with the others. I went out to the deck and stared at the sea for hours. Would I forgive Matthew one day? I didn't know. Maybe, with time. Maybe never completely. But at least now, I could think of him without my chest tightening in rage. That was something. The following months, I continued my routine. The gatherings with my friends became weekly. The house filled with laughter, with stories, with life. I started teaching first aid classes to young people in town, passing on decades of medical experience to the new generation. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by my relationships. I wasn't Matthew's mother, or anyone's wife, or the nurse from the hospital. I was just Olga, a 72-year-old woman who had fought for her dignity and won. One afternoon, almost 2 years after everything, I received a text message from a new number. Mom, it's me. I know you asked for space and I've respected it. I just wanted you to know that I'm doing well. I have a stable job, a small apartment, a simple life. I've been debt-free for 6 months. For the first time, I'm actually proud of myself. You don't need to respond. I just wanted you to know. I love you. I stared at the message for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating. Finally, I typed something brief. I'm glad for you. Take care. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't full forgiveness. But it was a bridge, a small, fragile one, but a real one. I put the phone away and went out to my favorite spot on the deck. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in colors that never repeated themselves exactly. Every sunset was unique, unrepeatable, beautiful in its own way, just like this life I had built. It wasn't the family I had imagined as a young woman. It wasn't the fairy tale ending where everyone forgives and lives happily ever after. It was something realer, more complicated, more honest. It was a life where I had chosen my peace over the approval of others, where I had defended my boundaries, even if it meant standing alone, where I had learned that love doesn't mean sacrificing yourself until you disappear. The sound of the waves filled the silence. But it was no longer an empty silence. It was a silence full of possibility, of reclaimed dignity, of lessons learned. For the first time in years, the sound of the waves wasn't competing with voices demanding what was never theirs. There was only the sea, the breeze, and me, finally free, finally at peace, finally home.